Hello and welcome to this very special edition of Inside Picture House. July 2018 is the 50th anniversary of the animation masterpiece that is the Beatles' Yellow Submarine, and sees the first theatrical release of the stunning restoration of the film in glorious surround sound. Simpsons writer Josh Weinstein described it as one of the most perfect pieces of moving art ever made.
The Yellow Submarine.
The restoration involved going back to the original negative and scanning it in 4K, but there was a lot of damage on the original negative, so there had to be a lot of photochemical restoration before they got to the scanning stage, and that's really important, and there's not that many labs left who can handle film in that way. And so we had a guy called Paul Rutan from Triage, and he undertook this photochemical restoration, but it was frame by frame restored. Al Brodax, who was the producer, for some reason decided that Eric Siegel should be the scriptwriter. Now, Eric Siegel was a professor of Greek at Harvard University and was not a man of the world in the sense that his head was deep in academia. In fact, there is supposedly he'd never heard of the Beatles, which is in 1967 takes some doing. Anyway, he was a very clever man, and he wrote a good script with some clever jokes and puns in it, along with a team of people over there. But the one thing that the script lacked was genuinely how the Beatles would speak. So at the last moment, Roger McGough agreed to come on board and scouse up, if you want to put it that way, a lot of the script.
Liverpool can be a lonely place on a Saturday night. And this is only Thursday morning.
Compared with my life, Eleanor Rigby's was a gay, mad world.
Roger never got a credit, which I think must have been a contractual issue with the other writers. Always seemed terribly unfair. So we now make sure that every time we talk about a Yellow Submarine, we make sure we mention Roger McGough. It was George Dunning who brought in Heinz Edelman, which was an inspired left field choice. I mean, you know, Heinz was a designer, you know, like a pop art poster designer in Germany who'd never had anything to do with animation. And it was his idea to bring him in, and they, together with brilliant animation directors, two of them, Bob Balzer and Jack Stokes, they drove this production and are responsible for the fantastic film that is still, I mean, the word groundbreaking is overused nowadays, but this was truly a groundbreaking animation film.
This film is a sort of biography of the people who worked on it, because it was improvised. And strangely enough, it is a documentary of the 60s.
Heinz decided each set piece scene should have a different look, so where they were taking a song and doing a full animation of it. So you had Eleanor Rigby, which had a certain look, which was based on layered footage. And then you had Lucy in the Sky, which was based on rotoscope, where you take live footage, you trace the outline, and you add color. And that's what Lucy in the Sky is, that extraordinary movement that you get from that, and color, which to this day astonishes people. And all, of course, done by hand then. The Beatles were fairly reticent about getting involved, but when they did turn up to view some of the work in progress, they were just blown away. And then, you know, were happy to provide songs, you know, get involved, and were absolutely delighted with the results. The soundtrack of the film was produced by George Martin. The whole soundtrack was remixed. It was the first Beatles music to be mixed in 5.1. And actually, it's an extraordinary experience listening to that soundtrack in 5.1, because the songs are so, you know, there's so many great sound effects in the film, and the music itself lends itself to 5.1, and that's part of the experience of seeing this in a cinema, is enjoying that surround sound. The story is a fairly well-worn story of good against evil, and actually one has to remember that the men who made it, Heinz particularly, grew up in a war-torn Europe. He was from Sudetenland, which was part of Czechoslovakia, which was invaded by Hitler in 1938 and annexed. So he knew, he understood about the totalitarian regimes.
The most important thing about the Beatles, that of course is their music. So who would the natural enemies be? People who hate their music. And where are such natural enemies to be found? A few hundred miles to the east. So logic gave the structure, produced the structure and the perfect villains.
The Beatles were all about, you know, love and peace, and all you need is love, and that married very neatly into the subtext of the film that Heinz Edelman and George Dunning wished to make. Now that it's the 50th anniversary, it seems the perfect time to make it available to be seen on the big screen, and it is remarkable, and I think will be enjoyed by people of all ages.